Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers, de pays étrangers.
French Canadians and Acadians in the United States have sometimes been described as in-betweens. That is, historically they faced prejudice and marginalization but did not endure the same barriers or violence as Indigenous groups and people of color. But there is another in-betweenness in Franco-American history, a geographical in-betweenness that we find in borderland regions. Franco-Americans' place in these liminal zones has raised different questions about nationality and belonging. That brings us again to an installment of the Lacroix Library. Our work this week is the aptly titled The Land in Between, the Upper St. John Valley, Prehistory to World War I. The book was written by Beatrice Craig and Max Dagenet with a collaboration of Lisa Ornstein and Guy Dubé. It recounts the development of French heritage communities in western New Brunswick and northern Maine, or what is sometimes called the historic territory of the Greater Madawaska. Britain and the United States both claimed the entire region until an 1842 treaty established the St. John River as the international boundary between Grand Falls and St. Francis. Existing communities on both sides of the new border were, in the short term, little affected by this decision. Residents continued to cross back and forth to visit family, attend religious services, and conduct business. Differences would nevertheless develop as the state of Maine began regulating the language of education in public schools in the 20th century. The aftermath of September 11th and the pandemic-related travel restrictions have since hardened the border and shaped the culture of the region. The authors of The Land in Between take a broad view of the region's history. They recognize and depict the original occupants of the land, whose culture and ancestry are difficult to trace during the colonial period due to displacement, population losses, warfare, and the mixing of separate bands. The authors also trace in great detail the process by which people of Acadian and French-Canadian descent sought legal title to the area along the river, lest they again be displaced. This is also a good opportunity to learn about the economic development of a region supported chiefly by lumber and by agriculture. In time, the telegraph and the railway accelerated the St. John Valley's integration in a larger economy. Still, it remained at the mercy of outside capital. In fact, much as the local Catholic Church was dependent on outside resources and religious orders. For anyone with an interest in the larger French-Canadian and Acadian story, The Land in Between is an essential work, arguably the most comprehensive guide to the French communities of the valley that's available. If, in its 400 pages, the book seems encyclopedic, it is also approachable, well organized, and enlivened by maps, tables, images, insightful sidebars, and primary documents. The sources that appear at the end of each chapter reflect the meticulous research undertaken to bring this work to fruition. And yet, quite modestly and graciously, the authors end this tome by recognizing the limits of their work and pathways for researchers interested in pushing the bounds of our own knowledge even further. Today, northern Maine is the most francophone area of the United States. It is a unique region molded by the proximity of Quebec and New Brunswick, where Acadian heritage and culture survive in ways that are unrivaled anywhere else in the U.S. Northeast. What better way to discover the valley than to read about its history and then to come up for a visit for the on-the-ground experience? Consider ordering The Land in Between from your local bookshop or by contacting the Maine Acadian Heritage Council or the Acadian Archives in Fort Kent. Bonne lecture!
Thanks, Patrick. This week's guest is someone we actually met a while ago while we were kind of in the planning phases of putting together a specific tour of Lowell to honor Jack Kerouac. And so our guest this week is going to be someone who is truly an expert on all things Kerouac, Steve Edington. He's going to give us a tour of some of the places in Lowell, as well as talk about some of Kerouac's connections to Nashua, New Hampshire. Really interesting interview. If you have any interest at all in any of the work of Kerouac and how his Franco-American background influenced his writing, you're going to want to check out next week. So again, next week, Steve Edington. What I like to do, if possible, is I like to ask a bonus question. As a sports fan myself, I'm a big sports guy, definitely a rugby guy. Mike is a big soccer guy, likes Liverpool soccer. I'm just out of curiosity because I don't know the answer. What about Jack Kerouac? Was he a sports guy?
Yeah, his big sport was baseball. He loved baseball. He writes about going to Boston to see them, and he actually had his own fantasy league that he somehow used playing cards for with teams.
Really?
That he would flip through decks to see who batted where. We had a great program about that a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But yeah, baseball was his big sport. If you read Desolation Angels, he talks about being on top of that Desolation Peak where he was a fire lookout in the summer of '56, all by himself for almost 2 months. He writes about having his cards up there and playing baseball games, somehow playing baseball games using a deck of cards while he was a fire lookout. So to answer your question is, yeah, baseball. He played well. Baseball was his big sport.
Sure.
His ticket out of Lowell, however, was he got a football scholarship to Columbia University because of his sort of football prowess on the Lowell high school team, and that was where he met Ginsburg and Burroughs and the rest.
Sure.
Say. So football was the sport that got him out of Lowell, but I think baseball was really his first love.
That's awesome. Very cool. I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you, sir.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josie Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at josievachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.